We go. Awesome. Well, I am so excited to have you guys here today as we talk with TK Curtis-Pugh, better known as TK, and she is the Executive Director of South Carolina Nurses Association, which serves over 80,000 nurses in the state of South Carolina. In this role, she works on advocacy, professional development, and legislative issues that both champion the nursing profession and support the community at large. TK also works to provide continuing education opportunities for healthcare professionals in the U.S. and abroad. She's a board member for the Midlands chapter of AMSN, and she works to improve health disparities in underserved communities through her membership on Chi Eta Pi Nursing Sorority and the underserved communities, and through the Junior League of Columbia. TK has represented nursing nationally through the American, I'm going to start that one over. TK has represented nursing nationally through the American Nurses Association and the American Organization of Nurse Leaders. And she's also been a presenter at the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses National Convention. She's a 2018 Palmetto Gold Award recipient and the 2019 President's Award winner for service to the SCNA. She's also been recognized in 2019 by the South Carolina Black Pages Top 20 Under 40, and she's a member of the American Nurses Association, of course, the SC Organization for Nurse Leaders, and the American Organization for Nurse Leaders. She's also a proud 2022 graduate of the Dorothy Irene Height Global Leadership Academy, facilitated by the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute. She's the founder and CEO of Nurse TK, LLC, a leadership, strategy, and empowerment brand that coaches healthcare professionals throughout their career continuum. And she serves as a keynote speaker on the local, regional, and national stages. She is uplifting and so enjoys all the joys of life and wants to help people be the best version of themselves. TK's philosophy is do it with passion or not at all. So welcome, TK. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah. Well, do you want to say anything more about, I think especially your role just as Executive Director of the SCNA? What does that mean? What do you do?
Sure. So my job is fluid, which is wonderful. It's one of those things that I get up in the morning and there could be any number of things that I have to do. But at the core of what I do, as you shared in my bio, I work on advocacy, legislation, and issues that impact nursing as a whole. My goal and my job is to ensure that nurses in the state of South Carolina and beyond can work at the top of their license, are able to have autonomy in the work that they do, and also really find the joy and fulfillment that we've all started off as in nursing, and really be able to connect back to that. So it's really passionate and purposeful work. A lot of the other things that we do are also in line with nursing professional development. So things like CEs that all nurses need, ensuring that we're continuing to expand on our education. So I'm a very fluid person in what I do every day, but at the core, like I said, it's all about just advocating for nurses, finding pathways forward for nurses, and supporting the work that we do at the bedside and beyond.
And I think it's important when you talk about professional development, that's one of your certifications, and really continuing that professional growth for people. It's something that a lot of people don't always associate with their nurses association. And I think it's one of the critical pieces that they often play.
Agreed. Oftentimes people forget that we go to school and we get all this education and then we go out into the world and we have to practice. But we sometimes forget that that practice is ever evolving. And
Right.
our roles as nurses and other healthcare professionals is to stay on the cusp of what's happening and to be able to ensure that the things that come down the pike don't impact us negatively. We want to be able to do our work in a way that is meaningful to both our patients and ourselves. And if we're not on the cusp of what's happening, being in the know about all the things that are happening in the world of nursing, then sometimes we get left behind. And it's really important for us not to do that. So understanding what's going on, understanding what's happening, being innovative and having a seat at the table while innovation is occurring is super important. And that's what we try to put out into the world. We try to make sure that people in South Carolina, like I said, and beyond, are noticing that, paying attention to that, even from the collegiate level, trying to make sure that as you get ready to graduate, that you know that you have a system of support, that you can continue to grow as a nurse, and it allows you not to be stagnant. It's super important that we ensure that they know that there is a full gamut of things that you can do in nursing. You should never get bored because there's always something to do. So we try to offer all those things to the our nursing community in South Carolina.
So TK, it is such an honor to be here with you. You're such an inspiration. And I love your do it with passion or don't do it at all. So at this time where there are so many issues going around healthcare, so many stresses, and particularly for nurses that have been practicing for a long time, we're seeing burnout. How do you help nurses regain the passion for the work that they do?
Well, I do that in a couple of ways. One is through speaking and engagements that allow me to be forward facing in front of nurses. But a lot of the things that I talk about, one of the biggest things I talk about is moral residue, and how nurses kind of take that and kind of pick it up. And I liken it to, being sticky in the trash. We kind of take all the stuff with us and it just stays stuck. And after a while, you can't carry those things anymore. So trying to help nurses find joy in work is super important. It's beyond just the joy, though. It's also the meaningfulness of the work. No one that I know got into nursing because they just wanted something to do and thought it was going to be an easy paycheck. Because we all know nursing school is hard, healthcare in general is hard, and now post-COVID, it has continued to evolve in its difficulty. So helping people find the joy in what they want to do, finding their niche is super, something I just try to help them understand and focus on. But then also helping them understand that this is not where you have to be. You're not stuck. You don't have to keep that sticky, nasty moral residue on you when you felt like I've done all I can do. I've tried to do the right thing and now I'm burnt out and I'm tired. Let me help you find another avenue to do the work you want to do. Let me help you find maybe another place to do what you want to do. Maybe there's some things that are going on that you didn't know anything about. So I try to help them with those things, but also helping nurses connect back to purpose is very important. And we tend to forget that. We get caught up in the metrics, we get caught up in, the deliverables that we have and the charting and all those other things. No matter where you work, those things are, going to be there to some extent, reports and what have you, but trying to help them figure out, why do I do this? Even leaders, nurse leaders are like, they're not necessarily taking care of patients day in and day out, but they're removing barriers. They're creating pathways for their frontline people to do the work. But they get burnt out as well, because how many times do I give you the same metrics? How many times have I given you the same reports? I know why these numbers don't look good. They don't look good because I don't have the staffing to support it. So trying to help them find all of those pieces of the puzzle and understanding that you don't have to stay in that space, whether it be the job or whether it be the actions in the job, helping them find ways to navigate through that is a lot of what I do in my personal business and helping people find purpose in the work that they do.
Not connected to purpose, that's when we flounder the most. And that purpose changes over time. So every now and then you've got to stop and re-examine it and what's driving me right now, what's the most important, and we're just not taught to do that on an ongoing basis. So yeah.
No, not at all. And I'll just say, for me, I was, prior to this role as the ED for SCNA, I was chief nursing officer of a hospital and loved that work, really, really enjoyed it. And during that time, to share something that's a little bit personal, but during that time, I had a major reproductive surgery. I had a hysterectomy and had to work through the recovery of that. My husband and I had been trying to have a child and could not. And we were able to have this beautiful young little person that we brought into the world through the gift of adoption. And in having her, my priorities changed. I no longer wanted to be 24/7 in the hospital, thinking about staffing, dealing with, grievances or patient complaints or food not being right from the cafeteria or whatever it may be. I needed to be able to have the ability to be a mother to her, but also I needed to be able to have fulfillment in my work. And I've always worked in the legislative and advocacy space. Oftentimes I did it through my own volunteerism and other avenues, but not as my day-to-day work. So when the opportunity came open to be able to do this for a living and do this as work, they always say if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't feel like I work really anymore, even though it is hard. There are days that are challenging, but I'm doing what I love and I'm able to focus on the other priorities in my life, and that's important to me.
Really excited about, something that's happening that you're like, hey, I'm so glad I got a chance to be a part of this, or other topics you just like to share about?
Oh, there's so many good things that are happening. Nursing, it's a good time in nursing.
Yeah.
And sometimes people see all the things that we're challenged with and the frustrations, but it's a really great time in nursing. We are doing amazing things in the innovation space. We're challenging ourselves with virtual nursing and AI and all these things that are a little scary because we don't know all of them right now. But at the same time, we are finding ways to embed those things in our practice and helping nurses to be able to do their work better. We're also doing things like in South Carolina, some states have done this already, but in South Carolina, we're working to expand the practice privileges for our advanced practice nurses.
Yeah.
So that they can work at their top of their license and have full practice authority and not need physician supervision in order to be able to do their work, especially those who are managing and owning their own practices. So there's a little bit of an oxymoron there when you think about it. But we're doing that type of work. We're working on workplace violence issues because we know that healthcare professionals are still being hurt in their healthcare setting, their work setting at alarming rates. And it is illegal. It is a felony for you to attack or abuse or hurt a pilot on a plane, but not a nurse who's providing care for you. So we're working on that on a national level and working on that legislation. We're working on things like Title VIII funding to expand access to education for underserved populations. So those areas that are often disenfranchised, that don't have the ability, or those first generation students who may not have the funding to be able to start going to school, because we know nursing school can be expensive, especially as you continue your trajectory with your education. We're working on Title VIII funding to find that. A couple of things I'll say that I'm just proud of, and I'll stop because I'll get really excited and I keep going. But so we just were able to pass in South Carolina. We got $650,000 from the South Carolina State Legislature to start a certified nurse midwifery program at the University of South Carolina. There is not one in the state, so we're super excited.
That is awesome.
It's so exciting. The hair on my arm just stood up.
Yeah, mine too, actually. That's my alma mater, so I love it.
Yeah, so that'll be coming. They'll start working on that in the spring with hopes of taking in that first class in the fall.
Excellent.
So we were able to partner with the University of South Carolina to do that. We also were able to secure $10 million in funding for nursing educators throughout the state to continue to expand the accessibility of nursing educators in the state. We know that that's a challenge too, because we turn away thousands of students every year in this state because we don't have enough educators for them. So being able to have someone who is in practice, who is current with clinical practice, is important. And that's not happening in a lot of our educational institutions in the state. We have people who've been in, academia so long, but haven't been in practice.
Yes.
And that disconnect is there a little bit. So we're trying to make sure that those nursing professionals and those educators can have a salary that is comparable to what they would make in the hospital, so they want to continue to do education. So we've done that. And then we've also been able to secure funding to start looking at some programs that would expand nursing early and expose young people to nursing early through
Right.
Midland's AHEC. And AHEC does a lot of work with the allied health professionals in the state. So looking at how we start our CNAs to get them ready to become nurses and have a pipeline for them. So the work that we're doing is exciting, it's fun, but it's also, it's invigorating for me.
Yeah.
And it tells me that there is a future for nursing that sometimes gets bogged down, that we don't always see, but there's an amazing bright future for us in the work that we're doing, and nurses are going to be better for it.
That's awesome. I love that. And I know Norma's got a question, but I'm going to go back to one thing. I think it's so exciting that we're finally getting to the place where we're talking about APRN independent practice. And while I think in some settings it's critical to have that physician connection and the work that we do together as partners, but we're the backbone for primary care now. And we have to really, and when you look at accessibility issues, when you look at addressing those healthcare disparities, a lot of times it's because there's not accessibility, and who's going to provide that is most likely our APRNs. And we need to make that something they can do, and that we can even consider if we're going to continue to address these healthcare disparities and these ongoing chronic health needs and wellness, truly ever get to the point where we talk about wellness instead of disease, right?
Right. And in rural areas, a state like South Carolina that has so many rural areas where it's, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles sometimes to get to a physician. We have advanced practice nurses who are willing and able to work in those rural settings to provide the care that those individuals need, and so that we can stop using our emergency rooms as our primary care offices. It's also and I'll take a point of privilege a little bit here, but as an African American woman, seeing women of color still dying at disproportionate rates in the maternal space is a challenge in this state in 2023. We're still faced with that. We can circumvent that problem by ensuring that these individuals get the care that they need early on. Oftentimes it's because they've gotten poor prenatal care or none at all, because they can't get to a physician's office. They can't get to those things. And I'll also say that one of the other things that we're doing along with that is working with some of our other lawmakers to talk about infrastructure. As much as we have to talk about nursing and the accessibility of healthcare providers, we've got to ensure that the infrastructure is in place so that they can do that work. So do they have broadband access? Can we use telehealth in those spaces? Maybe not, because they don't have that infrastructure in place. So we're thinking about those things as well as we're thinking about the health disparities. We're also thinking about those other things that prevent them from being able to get high quality health care.
Yeah, absolutely. I think COVID brought a lot of that to mind too, when we realized people couldn't always just do work from home, because they didn't have access. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Norma,
TK, I want to take you back to the bedside nurse and the leaders of those nurses. And we have found, I think that probably one of the most difficult jobs in the world today is the nurse manager position, where they find themselves between the patient and the families and the nurse and administration. So what advice do you have for those nurse managers, not only to be able to maintain their own passion for their work, but to help their nurses maintain their passion for their work and take care of those patients in the midst of all these pressures around them?
So having been a nurse manager myself in the past, I had a very kind of ladder movement through my journey to becoming the ED for the South Carolina Nurses Association. I have worked as a CNA, I've worked as a floor nurse, a bedside nurse, an assistant nurse manager, a nurse manager, a director, a CNO. I have done it all. And through each of those steps, the one thing that I always tell people is this, and this sounds crazy, but it's the truth. No is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. And I say that for this reason. Nurse managers, like you said, they're kind of in the limbo space. They're in the space where I've got to make sure that I'm satisfying those, the people from corporate and the people who are coming from our higher ups, our VPs and everything else. But I also have to make sure that the people that I serve are taken care of. I always used to tell my staff when I was a nurse manager that it's not my job to drive this bus. That's not my job. My job is to ensure that the bus has gas and is in working order. It's your job to drive the bus. What do you want to see? So nurse managers have to empower their frontline people to be a part of decision making. When we think about shared governance, when we think about being a part of nursing leadership in different ways, and cohorts of other healthcare professionals coming together, they're going to have to lean on those other disciplines. We do not work in silos anymore. It's not just nursing. It's nursing and it's respiratory and it's physical therapy and it's occupational therapy, and it's all those things coming together to ensure that the patient gets the best experience. So my advice to a nurse manager is, one, say no when you need to say no. Find ways to separate, but also build a team that allows you to be able to say no effectively. Oftentimes, the reason managers are in such a precarious place and feel so frustrated and feel as though their back is against the wall is because they don't have a team to support them. Your job as a nurse manager is not to do everything. It's not to answer every question. It's not to jump on something automatically. It is to ensure that your team is prepared. It is to arm the troops and prepare them for battle, so to speak, to ensure that they can go into a room and confidently have a conversation. It's getting your assistant nurse managers or your supervisors, whoever reports up to you, getting them prepared so you're already thinking about, number one, succession planning, but two, that you're helping them feel confident in what they're doing so that they want to have your back. I remember being a manager and my assistant nurse managers would say, "Don't worry about it, boss, I got this." And I would look over and I'm like, "You sure? I got this. You already showed me what to do. You told me how to do this. You helped me walk through this. I feel confident enough to do it." So build yourself a team that will support you and allows you to do the work. Say no when you need to say no, but create that environment that allows you to do that. And take time away. Your building will not burn down. Your team will not fall apart. If you have the right people in place, you can confidently go away and take a trip with your family and not be glued to your phone every 2 seconds. But if you have people in place that aren't the strongest or aren't the most trustworthy or don't have those leadership capabilities, then you're going to struggle, then you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to burn out much quicker. So I think that that's how we help them understand that this job is doable. But also, nurse managers need to know that this is not, I don't think anybody should stay in the nurse manager role forever.
Right.
This is that's a personal thing. That's not something I'm telling people what to do. There are people who've been nurse managers for 20 years. That's fine.
It makes sense, yeah.
But I would say that's one of those roles that you kind of got to be in for a while, get in, settle in, do the work, and then bring that other person up and find yourself other things to do, because it is so demanding. It requires so much of your time. It requires so much of your energy that you will burn out. So give yourself a out and create a path forward in the beginning. I always tell people, write your resignation letter on day one.
Yeah.
That's what I tell all my individuals that
Norma's
I'm
dying. She's in HR. She's like, wait, what?
Yeah, but this is why I tell them to do it on day one.
Yeah.
I tell them to do it on day one because you're happy on day one. On day one, you're excited. On day one, you love the job. You're so, grateful for the opportunity. So write your resignation letter then, and then just go file it somewhere. Go put it away. Because that way, when it's time to go, you're not going because I'm just mad today and I want to, just be angry and walk out of the door. You can refer back to that letter and say, why did I do this in the first place? What made me come to do this job in the first place? And if I'm moving on, it's because I have fulfilled those things. It's because I have done those things, and I can walk away knowing that I've done my part. But if you walk away because you're mad because somebody said something to you that day and it didn't feel good, or because your staffing was off or whatever the case may be, then you haven't done yourself or the role, the service that you should have done to the role. So I always say, write it on day one. And then when it's time for you to get ready to move on, pull it back out, reflect on it and say, have I accomplished these things? Because if you've done that, you can move on in the right way.
That's really great advice. TK, how do you balance the need to give nurses and nurse leaders the autonomy to do their job with, I mean, in other parts of the organization, we say, take some risks because nobody's going to die. In nursing, people can die, right? So tell me, how do you balance autonomy and risk management in both leadership and bedside nursing?
So I'll start with bedside, because bedside is a little bit more difficult. Because like you said, bedside, you go and you take a risk, you may kill someone. But what you can do as a bedside nurse is find ways to be a part of the change you want to see. So helping bedside nurses understand their roles in the growth of the organization is vital. If they know their why, then their what makes more sense. But if you don't know why you're doing this, if I don't know why we're using BD versus Cardinal, then it doesn't make sense. But if I'm a part of the decision making, there goes back to that shared governance model, or that professional practice councils or whatever you're using, going back to those things and saying, you know what, the reason that we use this is because we found that it's more user friendly for a brand new nurse to do this. It's more user friendly for us to be able to use this than that. This is a more simpler way to do the same work. This thing requires 12 steps, whereas this one requires 8. That saves me time in my day to do my work. So having them have a seat at the table. I have all these little sayings. I'm just one of those persons who just loves little sayings. But I always tell people, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Those are where you're gonna end up. You have to decide if you're gonna be the dinner or you're gonna eat the dinner. And I'm a girl from South Carolina, and a thick one at that. I like to eat. So I want to be able to sit down and cut my meat up and say, you know what, this is what I chose to have versus I got what was given to me. So if we can help our bedside people have that voice and have that seat at the table in the decision-making processes, then they are more apt to not feel as though things are just happening around them. And they're much more likely to stay with the organizations longer, and they're even more likely to bring your friends along for the ride.
Yeah.
From a leadership perspective, leaders, we're at the place in leadership that you don't get to make as many decisions. Your job is to figure out how to puppeteer the decisions that come from your corporate offices and all those things that come before you, to really ensure that your frontline people are able to do their work. You serve them. So I always told my staff, you don't work for me, I work for you. My job is to make sure that you're able to do yours. So if I'm not doing that effectively, then I'm not doing my job. So leaders have to find a way to, one, communicate what's happening on a broad level and make it more narrow focused so that the individuals can understand why it's happening. Leaders also need to find ways to continue to grow, whether it's certifications, whether it is continuing education, whether it's conferences. Sometimes something as simple as networking with other leaders who are doing the same work that you're doing and finding ways to have conversations with them about the work is sometimes meaningful enough to get you through another 3, 6, 9 months. You just never know what you're going to need, but it's the connection, it's the ability to understand why you do the work that makes leaders want to keep doing it. But if you aren't able to communicate that to your team, if you're a good leader, you care about your team too much to let them fail. So you're trying to find ways to remove those barriers for them, and in turn, find ways to remove them for yourself.
I think that's huge. My whole job right now is around implementing shared governance and empowering the voice of the nurse at the bedside. I think what's more interesting for people is, even moving beyond that. So the thought of the work that you do, for example, is, they go, okay, well, she's the executive director for the SCNA. That's her job now, is to do this legislative work. But what would you love to see nurses get involved in, not only at their local level, but even at that bigger level? How can somebody become involved in policy work or helping to change, rules and regs and all those interesting things that drive so much of our work, right?
Right. Well, I've been doing this since I was a baby nurse. So I'll start with students. Students need to join their student organization. So in South Carolina, it's the Student Nurses Association of South Carolina. Nationally, it's the National Student Nurses Association. Students need to be at the beginning of that, because then they learn the simple things. They learn what a bylaw is. They learn how to do amendment changes. They learn things like Robert Rules of Order, things that we think are just crazy and stupid because you're like, why do you need to know those things? But then when you have to go and speak in front of, a legislature of however many people, and you're like, oh, that's why that makes sense. So I would first say, for students to learn those, to get them involved there. From the next step would be for that nurse, the frontline nurse, or even that frontline nurse leader, become a member of your associations. You heard in the beginning, as Dr. Amy shared my bio, that I'm a member of a lot of stuff. And it sounds like, God, what isn't she a member of? It's probably the better, question. But the reason that I'm a member of the South Carolina Organization of Nurse Leaders and the American Organization of Nurse Leaders and the American Nurses Association and South Carolina Nurses Association and Chi Phi Nursing Sorority and all these other, things, is because there are different views on what's happening in nursing. And I'm able to pull what I learned here and what I learned there together to say, hey, well, the nurse leaders are thinking about this. Well, the frontline nurses are thinking about this. But you can get involved in something as simple as becoming a member of those associations. I'm not sure on dollars and cents on every association, but I can say for like ANA, for you to join ANA and your state association is $15 a month. I don't know about most people, but I spent that at Starbucks this morning, easily.
And more, right?
And more.
For sure.
We're praying about my Starbucks habit, but that's a conversation for a different day. But it's $15 a month. I think what I pay for the American Organization of Nurse Leaders breaks down to be about $22 a month. So being able to ensure that you're getting all of that information will spark something in you. When you start getting those, this is what's happening in nursing, and you're like, hold on, I know what I'm dealing with at the bedside and no one's talking about this. It will spark something in you to want to get involved. And then from there, start sitting in. Every state house has an opportunity for the public to sit in during session. You can go in and just listen, even if you don't know exactly what's going on. You don't know about the bills. You can go and listen. And you might say, well, I'm not interested. Oh, I can't talk. I'm not interested in any of those things. And, I don't understand that stuff. That's okay. The more you hear it, the more it becomes a part of that muscle memory and you learn it. But go in. You can go and pull up and say, when are they talking about healthcare legislation? And you may not know that there's a law out there that if you give the patient a wrong, one pill, that you may have a felony against you. But if you sat there and you heard that, then that would give you the power to be able to say, hey, we need to talk about that. So when there's a call to action in your email, instead of deleting that email, open it and read it. When there is a publication that's sent to your home, thumb through it. And if there's something that you're interested in, read up on it. Find out who's expert in it. We all have our moments where we're novice in one place and expert in another. If you're novice in that space, go seek out that expert. If you are interested in research, go find people who are interested in research. When there is like I said, when there's a call to action, show up. Show up. Most of the time, those things are put out enough in advance that if you're working at the bedside, you can schedule your day off. And I'm not saying everybody's got to be off that day, Maybe, hey, friends, I'm going to go to this day and they've got something coming up in the next 3 months. Maybe some of you should show up then. We are the most trusted profession in this nation, but beyond that, we are the biggest portion of the healthcare workforce, and yet we do not advocate and show up for ourselves. We accept what comes to us, and then we try to figure out how to MacGyver our way through what's given to us. Let's stop trying to figure out what's given to us, and let's start finding ways to get what we want. And what we want is to be able to provide care to patients. We want to be able to do it in the best way possible, the safest way possible. We want to do it with compassion and care for people, but we want to do it at the top of our license. We don't want to be stuck doing a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't feel like it's meaningful. And if it is meaningful, tell me why. Teach me why. But if you're not a part of that conversation, then you're doomed to a fate of getting what you get. And that's what we have to continue to tell our nurses, tell our nurse leaders. South Carolina has 80,000 plus nurses. We have a membership of less than 3,000. That's a problem. Mm-hmm. So as the new ED of this association, that is one of my goals. I have a very focused strategic goal of how we increase our membership so that people know who's working for them, but beyond that, so that they can come and work and fight with us. Excuse me.
A question? I've got one or two, but we're getting close to our end, so I want to make sure we're good on time.
Yeah, no, that was very inspirational. I think it's important to encourage people to get engaged, to know what's happening in their profession,
right,
and to contribute to the conversation. So thank you, TK.
Yeah. And I say the same shout out for shared governance locally, make sure you know what the decisions are, what's happening, and it truly drives your practice. That's the policy you have to defend your practice on, so love that. Well, we thought we'd ask a couple of fun questions here as we're wrapping up. So one of the fun questions I came up with was, if money and time were no object, what would you do?
Honestly, what I'm doing now.
Awesome. I love that.
I love the work that I do. The only difference, if money and time were no object, would be that I would hire a full-time nanny so my baby could go everywhere with me. She goes a lot of places with me, but I would just take her everywhere. But honestly, it would be this work. It would be this work for the state of South Carolina, but it would be this work doing national work as well. I love working on behalf of nurses because I know what it's like. And I never completely take my finger off the pulse of nurses and what we're doing. I still work as a practicing nurse from time to time when my schedule permits, but I still do it because I want to be able to say, I understand. And I don't want to just have, sympathy for someone. I want to be able to empathize because I really understand it and I felt it and I experienced it. So yeah, I would be doing this, honestly.
I told my husband, I said, I would probably just hire someone to come and cook all the food. I already have someone who comes and cleans. I've learned the value of spending that money. I will go out to eat less to have someone who comes and cleans.
Yeah,
so,
I have that too. I have somebody who cleans already. I'll probably get them to come a little bit more often because use it with a 1-year-old who's learning how to crawl up the steps with food down her face.
Oh yes. Oh yes, for sure.
Yeah. I would love to do this all day, every day. And I guess I do.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Norma, do you have any other questions you want to ask?
Oh, so just one, and I don't know if it's a fun question, but if there's one book that you think nurse leaders should read, what would that book be?
Only one?
I know, I'm only giving you one choice.
Meanwhile, we sit with a whole couple of bookshelves each.
Right, like I'm looking right here at how many.
You want to give me two? We'll take two.
Okay, so here's two. The first one is Crucial Conversations. I think that every leader, no matter where you are, should read that. It's just a really good read, and it really just helps you if you've never been in that position. I'm gonna take a one that's not a real one, so don't count this one. But I would say anything by Quint Studer.
Oh,
Just because the wealth of knowledge in the Studer group is amazing, and just go find something and read it.
That's
And
great.
then the other book would be Patience Comes Second.
Yeah,
And that book really helped me to understand what it means to be a nurse leader,
yes.
because we always say patients come first. In the customer service industry, we say customers come first, you know. But our job as leaders is to take care of the people who take care of the people. And if we don't take care of them and we make the patients come first, we're not going to have the workforce that we need to take care of those patients.
Right.
So I would say Patients Come Second would be my second book.
That's great. Great.
You know,
advice.
we're for sure hearing that more and more from leaders as we talk about where our priorities are, because we know when we take care of our people, they're going to take care of the patients, and that's what they want to do. That's why they're there anyway, and they want to do it in a place where they feel cared for, heard, and protected, quite frankly, right? Yeah.
Right.
And Quint just published his new book, Rewiring Excellence. So I'm reading through that right now. So I agree. Definitely reach out and start reading that. I think it's a good place, especially he's made it a living book now. So as they make edits and things like that, it'll just go right up there. So I think that's going to be a really good one.
I love that. Yeah. I love books. So I'm just like, that was hard.
I'm sorry.
That was hard, Norma. But it was a fun hard.
I know Amy and I read all the time, and we're exchanging books, so I know how hard it is.
Yes.
I love to read, and I love to expand my knowledge, and I love to challenge myself, because I feel like, you know, I never know enough, and there's always room to grow. So
yes,
I love that. That was a good, hard, fun question.
Right. But you're right. We have to keep challenging ourselves and thinking about the new things and what else is there and how do we, you know what I mean? So I'm totally with you. Totally with you. I think that's a critical piece of professional development, is to read, listen to podcasts, you know, things like that.
So one last question. This is truly for fun, TK.
Okay.
Last mini series or movie that you've watched that you think people should watch?
Painkiller on Netflix.
Okay.
Painkiller. All right.
I saw that. That is, it's incredible.
I am not a television watcher.
Eye-opening. Yeah.
I'm not a television watcher. Like, I don't sit down and watch TV often. I watched that series in 2 days. I just came back from Orlando, and I went for a family thing, and I had some downtime, and I watched it. And if you, as a healthcare professional, you will enjoy it, just because it's like, wow, I remember this. I remember that. Even though, of course, a lot of things were fictionalized and dramatized, but it was so good. The acting was great. But just that thought on that whole opioid epidemic and the expansion of that really hit home as a healthcare professional. So hands down, that's it.
That's awesome. I love that. I got to catch up to you too, clearly.
Good recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, you know, it's always so good to talk with you and catch up. And thank you so much for coming and being a guest.
Likewise. I thank you so much for having me, and